Why do you cry when a sneaker commercial shows someone overcoming adversity? Why does your chest tighten when you see that little swoosh, that half-eaten apple, that four-ringed badge? They're just shapes, just ink, just pixels on a screen. But somewhere along the way, you learn to feel something when you see them. You learn to believe in them. You learn to worship them. And the people who own those shapes, those billion-dollar totems, they don't even know your name. This isn't a story about marketing. This is a story about religion, about how corporations spent the last century converting you into a believer, a disciple, a tithe-paying member of a church that has no concern for your salvation. This is about the logos, the symbols, the brands that have colonized your identity. And it's about the very specific moment in history when they learned how to make you love them more than you love yourself. Let me take you back to a specific place and time. New York City, 1929, October. The stock market doesn't just decline. It doesn't merely correct. It collapses like a building that's had its foundation ripped out. Men in expensive suits are throwing themselves from office windows because the numbers on the ticker tape have turned against them. The American economy, that great roaring engine of prosperity, seizes up and dies. And in the aftermath, in the wreckage, something interesting happens. Something that will change everything about how you see yourself. Before the crash, advertising was simple. It was informational. A company would tell you what they made, where you could buy it, how much it cost. The ad for Ford didn't make you feel anything about being a Ford man. It just told you the Model T had 4 wheels and an engine. The advertisement for Ivory soap didn't whisper promises about your identity. It said the soap was pure. It floats. Here's the price. This was advertising as information, as transaction, as simple commerce. But the Depression destroyed that world. Suddenly, nobody had money. The factories were still running, still producing, but the people who used to buy the products were standing in bread lines. The machinery of capitalism had produced an absurd situation. There was enough food, enough clothes, enough goods, but the system of distribution had broken. People were starving next to full warehouses. The economic structure had revealed itself to be not a natural law, but a fragile human construction that could simply stop working. The advertising men, the people whose job it was to convince Americans to buy things, they had to evolve or die. And one man, more than any other, figured out the new game. His name was Edward Bernays. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he understood something that would reshape civilization. He understood that people don't buy products. They buy feelings. They buy identities. They buy solutions to psychological problems they didn't even know they had. Bernays had already proven this before the crash. In 1929, the American Tobacco Company had a problem. Women didn't smoke cigarettes in public. It was considered unladylike, improper, almost scandalous. This meant that half the potential market was locked away behind social convention. So Bernays staged an event. He hired a group of young debutantes to march in the Easter Parade in New York City. At a specific moment, on his signal, they would all pull out cigarettes and light them in public. He tipped off the press beforehand. He told them these women would be lighting torches of freedom. Think about that phrase. Torches of freedom. He took a cylindrical tube of dried leaves wrapped in paper, a product that destroys your lungs and yellows your teeth, and he turned it into a symbol of women's liberation. He transformed a commodity into an idea. The newspapers ran the story. The photographs spread across the country, and overnight, the taboo evaporated. Women started smoking in public. Not because they suddenly enjoyed nicotine, but because Bernays had convinced them that the cigarette meant something. It signified something about who you were. This was the blueprint. This was the technique that would metastasize through every corner of American commerce. You don't sell the product, You sell the identity. You sell the feeling. You sell the story people tell themselves about themselves. After the Depression, after World War II, America entered a strange new phase. The factories that had been producing tanks and bombers needed something to manufacture. The economy needed consumers, needed people to buy, to spend, to keep the machine running. But there was a problem. Most people already had what they needed. They had clothes, they had cars, they had refrigerators. The challenge wasn't scarcity anymore. The challenge was convincing people to want more than they needed. The advertising industry, armed with Bernays techniques and funded by massive corporate budgets, launched a psychological war. They hired psychologists, researchers, artists. They studied human insecurity, human desire, human fear. They learned that people in suburban homes, people with steady jobs and full pantries, were still anxious, still uncertain, still looking for meaning in a world that felt increasingly anonymous and cold. So, they sold meaning. They sold it in the form of logos, of brands, of symbols that promised you were part of something bigger than yourself. The Marlboro Man wasn't selling cigarettes. He was selling masculinity itself. That rugged cowboy, that frontier independence, that image of a man who answered to no one. The cigarette company took one of the most addictive and deadly products ever created and wrapped it in the mythology of American manhood. Men didn't smoke Marlboros because they tasted good. They smoked them because they wanted to feel like that cowboy. They wanted to believe they were tough, independent, free. The logo, that simple red and white package, became a shorthand for an entire identity. Coca-Cola didn't sell sugar water. They sold happiness. They sold Norman Rockwell Americana. They sold the fantasy of the perfect family gathering, the summer picnic, the small-town innocence that maybe never existed in the first place. The curved bottle, that specific shade of red, the flowing white script. These weren't just design choices. They were religious iconography. They were symbols that triggered a Pavlovian response in your brain. See the logo, feel the warmth, remember the commercial with the smiling faces and the fireworks. Apple, later, much later, would perfect this technique. They would take the counterculture rebellion of the 1960s, the anti-establishment energy of the hippies and the artists, and they would package it, sell it back to you in the form of sleek aluminum and glass. The bitten apple wasn't just a company marker. It was a badge. It said you were creative, you were different, you thought different. Never mind that you were buying a mass-produced product from one of the largest corporations on Earth. Never mind that the device was assembled in factories where workers installed suicide nets to catch people trying to throw themselves off the roof. The logo promised you were special, and you believed it. This is where we need to understand the mechanics, the actual process by which a symbol burrows into your brain and sets up residence. It's not magic. It's repetition and association and exploitation of how human psychology works. Your brain is designed to find patterns and create shortcuts. It has to be. You can't consciously process every piece of information that comes at you every second, so your mind creates associations. It builds connections. Fire is hot. Don't touch. That smell means food is burning. Pay attention. This face means safety. Trust it. Advertisers hijack this system. They show you the logo next to things you already have positive feelings about. Beautiful people, happy families, success, achievement, belonging. They do this thousands of times, millions of times. The logo appears in the corner of the football game you love. It's on the billboard you pass every day on your commute. It's woven into the TV show, the movie, the podcast. Product placement isn't clumsy anymore. It's surgical. And slowly, without you noticing, your brain starts making the connection. The logo equals the good feeling. The symbol becomes inseparable from the emotion. This is classical conditioning. The same technique Pavlov used to make dogs salivate at the sound of a bell. Except you're the dog, and the bell is a swoosh, an apple, 3 stripes, golden arches. But it goes deeper than simple association. The logos become part of your identity, part of how you signal to the world who you are, or more accurately, who you want people to think you are. In the 1950s, a sociologist named Irving Goffman wrote about what he called the presentation of self. His idea was that people are constantly performing, constantly managing the impression they make on others. You're not just a person, you're an actor on a stage, and you're using props and costumes to tell a story about yourself. The corporations understood this instinctively. They understood that in a mass society, where you're surrounded by strangers, where community and tradition have broken down, people are desperate for ways to signal their identity, to say, "This is who I am, this is my tribe, this is where I belong." So they sold you the uniform. The Nike shoes say you're an athlete, a warrior, someone who doesn't quit. The North Face jacket says you're an adventurer, someone who climbs mountains and pushes limits, even if you're just walking to Starbucks. The Supreme logo, that simple red box with white text, it says you're in the know. You're part of the culture. You understand what matters. These signals are particularly powerful for young people, teenagers and young adults who are still figuring out who they are, who are desperate to fit in and simultaneously desperate to stand out. The brands know this. They target you when you're most vulnerable, when your identity is most fluid, and they offer you a ready-made self. Just buy the product, just wear the logo, and you'll know who you are. The cruelty of this system is hard to overstate, because the logos don't care about you. The corporations don't care about you. You are not a person to them. You are a data point, a consumer demographic, a lifetime value calculation. When Nike runs an ad about social justice, about believing in something, even if it means sacrificing everything, they're not taking a moral stand. They're running the numbers. Their marketing team has determined that this message will resonate with their target demographic, that it will generate more positive sentiment than negative backlash, that it will ultimately sell more shoes. The moment the calculation changes, the message changes. The logo is a mercenary. It fights for whoever pays. Apple talks about privacy, about protecting your data, about standing up to governments, and maybe there's some truth in it. But Apple is also one of the most valuable companies in human history. It has achieved this value by creating devices that track your every movement, that know your location at all times, that listen to your conversations to serve you better ads. The company that ran an ad showing a hammer smashing Big Brother's face is now one of the most powerful surveillance systems ever created. But you still feel good when you see that glowing apple, because they've trained you to. The fashion brands are perhaps the most honest about the con. Luxury fashion, high-end streetwear, designer labels, they're not selling quality anymore. You can get a well-made t-shirt for $15, but the t-shirt with the right logo costs $200, $300, $1,000. What are you buying? You're buying the social signal. You're buying the ability to show people you can afford to waste money. You're buying your place in the hierarchy. Thorstein Veblen wrote about this in 1899. He called it conspicuous consumption. The idea that wealthy people buy expensive things not because the things are better, but because the expense itself is the point. It's a signal. It says, I have so many resources that I can burn them on frivolous luxuries. And in a society organized around status competition, these signals matter. They determine where you sit at the table. But Veblen was writing about the genuinely wealthy, the robber barons, the industrial titans. What's happened in the last 50 years is the democratization of this impulse. Now, everyone is trying to signal status through consumption. The kid working at the grocery store is saving up for the Jordans. The middle manager is stretching his budget for the German sedan. The college student is going into debt for the designer handbag. All of them are trying to buy their way into a higher position in the social hierarchy, and the logos are the currency. This creates a treadmill, because the value of the signal depends on scarcity. If everyone has it, it doesn't mean anything. So the brands have to keep creating new limited editions, new exclusive drops, new collaborations. They have to keep moving the goalpost, keep you chasing, keep you spending. And you do. You camp out overnight for sneakers. You refresh the website at midnight hoping to get the limited release. You follow the brand on social media. You engage with their content. You become a volunteer marketer, posting photos of yourself in their products, tagging them, hoping they might repost you and give you a tiny hit of validation. You have become a worshiper, and the logo is your god. You pray to it with your credit card. You display your devotion by wearing it on your chest, your feet, your wrist. You gather with other believers at the store, the drop, the release event. You speak the language. You know the lore. You can distinguish the real from the fake with a glance. And what do you get in return? A product that will be out of fashion in 6 months. A company that will drop you the second you stop being profitable. A symbol that means nothing except what the marketing department decided it should mean this quarter. The most insidious part is how this worship displaces other forms of meaning. Human beings need to believe in something. We need community, purpose, transcendence. For most of human history, people found these things in religion, in tradition, in family, in local community. But those structures have weakened. The church is empty. The family is scattered. The neighborhood is just a place you sleep. So the brands stepped in to fill the void. They offer community. The sneakerheads, the Apple fanboys, the Harley riders. They offer purpose. Be authentic. Just do it. Think different. They even offer transcendence. The experience of the new iPhone unboxing, the spiritual moment of pulling on the fresh Jordans, the quasi-religious feeling of wearing the supreme drop that only 100 people in the city were able to get. But it's all hollow. It's all simulation. The community is not real community. You don't know these people. You will never break bread with them, never help them move, never sit with them in grief. You're connected only by your shared consumption of the same corporate product. The purpose is not real purpose. You're not creating anything, not building anything, not leaving anything behind. You're buying things. You're displaying things. You're participating in a cycle of consumption that enriches shareholders and destroys the planet. And the transcendence is not real transcendence. It's a dopamine hit, a brief neurochemical reward that fades in hours, leaving you empty and hunting for the next fix. This is the trap. This is the lie. The logos promise to give you identity, to make you special, to include you in something meaningful, but they've actually done the opposite. They've turned you into a walking billboard. They've reduced your identity to the products you can afford. They've monetized your insecurity and sold it back to you in the form of temporary validation. So what's the escape? How do you break free from a system that has woven itself into every corner of your life? The first step is recognition. You have to see the game being played. You have to notice when you feel something for a logo and ask yourself why. Where did that feeling come from? Who profits from it? What are you actually getting? Start paying attention to your own thoughts. When you see the ad, when you want the product, pause. Ask yourself what you actually want. Is it the physical object? Or is it the feeling you think the object will give you? The confidence, the status, the belonging. And then ask yourself if a mass-produced corporate product can actually deliver those things. Spoiler, it can't. The second step is divestment. Start removing the logos from your life. Not all at once, not as some performative gesture, but slowly, deliberately. When your shoes wear out, replace them with something without a giant swoosh. When your t-shirt becomes a rag, buy a plain one. When your phone breaks, consider whether you actually need the latest model or if last year's refurbished version does everything you need. This isn't about becoming a minimalist monk. It's about reclaiming your autonomy. It's about refusing to be a billboard. It's about opting out of the status game that you can never win anyway. The third step is redirection. All that energy you've been spending on brands, on products, on consumption, you have to redirect it towards something real. Learn a skill. Build something with your hands. Join a local organization that does actual work in the world. Form real relationships with real people based on shared values and experiences, not shared purchasing habits. Find meaning in creation, not consumption. In competence, not branding. In connection, not display. This is harder than it sounds, because the entire infrastructure of modern life is designed to keep you consuming. The algorithms feed you ads. The social media platforms are built to make you feel inadequate, so you'll buy things to feel better. Your friends and family are often trapped in the same system, judging you by the same metrics. But you can do it. You can step off the treadmill. You can stop worshiping the LOGOS. You can reclaim your mind, your money, your identity from the corporations that have colonized them. The LOGOS don't care about you. They never did. They never will. They are not your friend. They are not your tribe. They are not your identity. They are simply marks on products made by corporations that exist to extract wealth from you. Stop giving them your devotion. Stop giving them your money. Stop giving them yourself. You are not a Nike person or an Apple person or a Supreme person. You are a person. Full stop. And that's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything.